Can we start? Начинаем? Okay. So, а сейчас что? I'm just 3 minutes, they say. 2 minutes.
Oh, we still have 2 minutes?
We can entertain. I love the topic. I personally expect to hear a lot of wonderful things about the topic.
So we're doing a YouTube live broadcast, is that what's happening?
Yeah. Okay. It's going to be on the YouTube channel of the university, да? Да, Геннадий? У нас буде на університетському каналі YouTube, воно крутиться? So it's going to be recorded on YouTube channel of the university.
But then
Get
published later, right?
a link to you.
But published later, right? It's not simulcast. Is it being broadcast right now?
Right now.
Or
Пряма трансляция, да? Right now.
it is live. Okay. Got it.
Does it make it different?
No, I'm just.
Павловна? Go. Ready, steady, go. So, good afternoon, everyone. So we've got a bright lecturer in our university, in Alfred Nobel University, a lecturer coming from the United States of America, who is a well-known leader, I would say, in hospitality, in luxury hospitality, and in tourism sector, a person who is known as a trainer, as a professor, who is invited by many luxury segment businesses to have trainings for their staff on different aspects of hospitality and tourism. This is a unique opportunity for our university to have a lecturer of that level. And Professor Dipra, we are really happy to have you here and to listen to you, to the insights that you have with your experience, with your expertise on what's happening in the world in the field of industry and hospitality. And we want to learn from you and to have the best of the practices you will kindly share with us today. Will you please take the floor and give the lecture? Thank you.
Thank you. Jackie, Professor Helena, good to see all of you. It is just wonderful that we are not on Zoom, we are in real life in a same building. Isn't that something? It's just wonderful. I cannot thank enough Professor Helena and everybody else here at Alfred Nobel University for their kind and gracious hospitality. Though I have been in Naples only 2 days, I am loving the city. Thank you for making the weather so wonderful. And it is just wonderful. So Professor Helena asked me to specifically talk about cultural context in hospitality today. And my goal is to take roughly 45 to 50 minutes to talk about why it is important to understand the cultural context in hospitality. Before I get started, can everybody hear me clearly? Yeah. Okay, perfect, good. In Zoom, we would have asked you to raise a hand, but here, people can just respond directly. Okay, so here is the plan for this session. So I first want to start off by sharing some of my own experiences with cultural context, because it is important for you to understand where I am coming from. And then we are going to talk about essentially the low context versus high context cultures. It is extremely important for you to understand what are the differences and why understanding these things are important. Then we will quickly look at a slide which has got the Iceberg model of culture. Finally, I'm going to I'm going to spend more time on hospitality and business etiquette, and then I will end with a case study how all of this is actually used in real life. So the cultural dimensions in hospitality, and then we'll have some Q&A. I know once we finish this presentation, we'll have some time just to have some informal conversation so the conversation can continue. It doesn't have to stop here with this formal session. Sounds like a plan? Are you guys excited? Yeah, let's look at it. Okay. So all of you already know me, but here is a quick information about myself. I am Professor Dipra. I am a professor at Washington State University. I teach in two broad areas. One is hospitality business management, That's the reason all of you were in the hospitality systems course. And then I also teach in the area of international business. I am the assistant director for the School of Hospitality Business Management at Washington State University. Just for your information, the School of Hospitality Business Management at Washington State is 90 years old, and we are the #2 program in America. #1 is Cornell. So we are a very high-ranked program. My personal expertise or my area of expertise within the profession are primarily two areas. One is luxury hospitality. I work with a lot of luxury brands, primarily luxury hotel brands around the world. And I also do work in tourism strategy. For example, if the city of Dnipro would like to develop more into tourism, attract inbound tourists from other countries, how would they strategize? What are some of the things that they can do? So I help countries, cities, or communities to actually plan for that kind of tourism strategy. And then I am also a member of the board of directors of Washington Tourism Alliance, which is the state level agency which is responsible for all of the tourism marketing activities in the state of Washington. So I know many of you have attended hospitality business, but some of you might still be kind of confused, when I'm talking about Washington, which Washington I'm talking about. Because even within the United States, outside primarily, whenever we say Washington, people automatically assume Washington, D.C., which is the capital of America. I am not in Washington, D.C. I am in the cooler Washington. We are the cool kids. So we are on the West Coast. As you can see, that map, the state. So right below us is Oregon, and right after that is California. You can just drive down to Hollywood. So that's the Washington I live in, and where Washington State University is located. We are very blessed that we are home, or we had some of the most iconic companies in the world which were started in Washington, or they call Washington their home. For example, since this is a hospitality group, Starbucks was actually born in Washington. If you go to the city of Seattle, you can still go get coffee in the original Starbucks store. You have to wait for 2 hours in the line to get in. It's like a pilgrimage. A lot of people come to Pike Place Market in Seattle just to get a cup of coffee at the original Starbucks store. Amazon was born in Seattle, and Amazon is still headquartered in Washington. Microsoft, same thing, is a Washington company. Their headquarters are right outside of Seattle. And then Boeing, the plane company. So these are some examples. We have hundreds of other companies that are Washington-based or call Washington their home. So we are a very entrepreneurial state. And you can imagine that just between Amazon and Microsoft, each of these companies are what we call trillion-dollar companies. Their value is astronomical. So these giant businesses also attract other businesses. Our biggest city, or our main city, is Seattle, which is located on the west side of the state. It's a spectacularly beautiful city. Great seafood, absolutely a hub of technology. All of these giant companies are located in around there. Absolutely spectacular. If you ever get a chance to travel to the west coast of the United States, do stop by Seattle. The rest of Washington is very beautiful as well. And I live in a city called Pullman, which is on the eastern side of the state. And this is the campus of Washington State University, located in the rolling Palouse Hills. It is just beautiful, as you can see, especially in the autumn when the trees start turning colors. It is a sight to behold, the yellow and the purple and the blue as you are driving through these Palouse Hills. So that's a little bit, about where I work and where Washington State is located, and kind of a picture of the city of Seattle and Washington State University campus. So one of the things I absolutely enjoy doing, I always tell people, tourism and hospitality is not something that I only teach or talk about. I really enjoy this industry. And what I mean by that is that I consider myself a travel geek. Who knows where this picture was taken? Machu Picchu, yeah, in Peru. So, you know, each year during my birthday, I actually look at the world map and I put my finger on a place and I say, I'm going to go there on this birthday. And I'm going to spend, you know, discovering this birthday. So it has been my ritual for the last so many years. So 2019, right before the pandemic hit, I decided that I will spend my birthday hiking Machu Picchu. It is wonderful. It is a spectacular experience. So, and I am an intrepid traveler. That means, you know, I try to dig deep. I try to learn more about the culture, about the food, the people, and so on and so forth. And I am always looking for very different types of travel experiences. So here is Machu Picchu, and the same year, here is where I was in December, you know, of 2019. Anybody here has been to Chernobyl? I knew that. I knew that, you know. See, here is a tourism opportunity, yeah? And I do not know if you know this. Chernobyl has become Ukraine's #1 foreign tourist attraction. It is a spectacular opportunity, and of course, it has got a lot to do with Hollywood, because the 5-part miniseries Chernobyl, created by HBO, fueled a lot of interest in visiting this place. I visited there during December 2019. It was a cold, dark, gray day, but the place was full with tourists from Germany and Spain and everywhere else. And I know, because Chernobyl is not a happy memory for most Ukrainians, so that's the reason the local population generally tend not to go there. But once again, this is a great example of what we call dark tourism, just like people visit places like Auschwitz in Poland, same kinds of things, something that very bad and grotesque happened there, but now there's an opportunity to educate, because Chernobyl, I thought, was a phenomenal experience, because it is very tightly controlled. You have to submit your passport, and then you have to go with a proper guide. You just can't walk in there. So as an intrepid traveler, this was a very different kind of a travel experience. And having been able to travel all over the world also exposes me to all kinds of unique things. For example, when I lived in China, I, for the first time, tried this. Who knows what this is? Who here has eaten fried scorpions? Anybody? No? Who would like to try? Only 2 people. Yes, I mean, you know, I am the kind of person, probably when I first started traveling, I was very scared of local foods, but now, like, how do I know if I don't try? So when I'm talking about cultural context in hospitality, all of these tied into this stuff. And when I tried a fried scorpion for the first time, it was like, wow, this just tastes like fried prawns, but you don't eat the tail because the tail can sting, you know? And actually there was a gentleman who was standing next to me. He was eating something big and black, and I was looking at him like, what is he eating? Actually, because this was in Beijing, China. I'm like, and then I realized that was a fried tarantula spider. Think about it. So my next goal in life is to eat a fried tarantula spider. If I do that, and if I am still living, I will show you guys the picture next time I'm back here, you know? So as you can see, that when we talk about cultural context in hospitality, that food is actually very culturally contextual, and there is a growing interest of people in exploring these types of things, which are very, very unique, very, very different. So what is my experience with different cultures, you know, around the world? I get to travel a lot because of work, just like I am here in Dnipro. So my experience with cultural contexts has been with all over the world. So this was the first time I came to Ukraine in 2019. Here I am speaking at, you know, at the Kiev Institute of Business and Law, and with all of the students and all of the professors and all of that kind of stuff. On the same trip, you know, I did a 5-hour car ride to Sumi. It was like a 5-hour roller coaster, you know. I think I lost 10 kilos on that trip to Sumi. I hear the roads are much better nowadays. So we will see what happens tomorrow once I go to Sumi. Like, you know, I fly into Kyiv and then take a car to Sumi. So here I'm speaking at Sumi State University. Here I am teaching at Hainan University in China. I want you to take a very close look at this picture. What do you see in this classroom that is very different, say, from this hall? What do you see in this classroom that is different from an average classroom anywhere else in the world? Is there something unique? The two giant cameras on both sides, you just see one, everything is being recorded. Every word you say, you know, everything you ask, it's a very different culture. There's a reason it actually creates a situation where people are very hesitant to ask anything because you just don't know what you are going to get in trouble for, right? So on and so forth. So when I'm talking about cultural context, you know, in hospitality or culture, that as I go do this stuff all over the world, I also pick up on all of these nuances in how to speak to audiences or how to actually engage with different audiences. And why is this important is that once you graduate and you start working in the industry and you engage with people from different cultures, you need to understand that someone who has gone to school for 5, 6, 8 years in this system will have a very different mindset from somebody who did not. Does that make sense, what I'm saying? Yes, so that's why I'm showing you all these stories. Here I am in Breda University in Netherlands. Their campus is actually refurbished from an old monastery. So their main hall is this chapel. You can see the organ in the back. Isn't this beautiful? Absolutely. For the first time, it felt like I'm delivering a sermon. Like I'm like, this is fantastic. Like we are in a church. So very different atmosphere and people. Can anybody guess which country is this? Close, Thailand, Phuket, you know. Lots of happy people. Island life, you know, they are super cool. Absolutely, they are just happy people, you know, in Phuket, Thailand, because they have a great quality of life. They wake up, you know, and they can go get a swim and have amazing seafood and come to class. Once again, cultural dimensions are very different. Anybody can guess where this is? Close, Budapest, Hungary, in the Corvinus Business School, you know. You see, the audience is just much more stoic. They're wonderful people, but the culture changes in how you actually, you know, engage with the audience and you know, how they are going to engage with any brands or business and so on and so forth. And here I am, you know, talking to a group of students in India. And this is the last one. I was in Denmark just in September. Actually, this is in October. And I was doing a presentation at the Copenhagen Business School, and look at their classrooms. Absolutely collaborative, open space classrooms, you know? So it changes the nature of how you actually learn to learn your craft, learn hospitality, and all of that kinds of things. So I just wanted to kind of, you know, show you these pictures to give you an understanding of what is my idea or what's my engagement with different cultures, and how engaging with this cultural context actually changes your perspective or kind of broaden your perspective. I have been doing this global virtual classroom for a long time now. Like, I started in 2017 with 2 universities, one in Dubai and one in Oman. So as you can see that, you know, these are the catchbox microphones I was holding at the time, and we were actually, you know, speaking to each other. This is a very cool technology. These microphones, when I ask a student a question, I can throw these microphones. For example, if I'd ask somebody a question, I can throw these microphones. When they fly through the air, it shuts off. When somebody catches it, turns back on. And so when you're doing a Zoom class, if you're wanting to capture clear audio, this is very, very helpful. So the global virtual classroom model has been going on much before the pandemic, and I was one of the early adopters of this model. So it is wonderful. I have also experience, with other kinds of technologies. For example, I use a robot in my classroom that moves around. It is called a Telepresence Robot. So, for example, if, say, I invite Professor Helena to actually deliver a lecture in my class, I can even give the control of this robot in a Washington State University classroom to her. She can drive the robot in my classroom remotely, And as you can see, my students are kind of freaked out by this technology. Some of them felt it was too much of technology. But that's where the world is going. That's where hospitality is going. That's where services, engagement, all of these things are going. We are now seeing much more adaptation, integration of these types of technologies. For example, a hotel, which is a quarantine, lockdown, and so on and so forth, if a guest would like to come into the hotel, they can actually send this telepresence robot to the door, which can welcome the guest, and then will unlock the door, the guest comes in, the robot can walk the guest to the lift or the elevator. Makes sense what I'm saying? Now you see the connection of how these things are now evolving very, very quickly. So one of the things I would like to do is start with a quote by the famous management philosopher, Peter Drucker. He once famously said, "Culture eats strategy for breakfast." Think about it for a minute, what Drucker said. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. What Drucker is saying is that you may have the best strategy in the world, but if you do not understand the culture, then it is not going to work. Let me give you a specific example. Remember I showed you the classroom in China with 2 giant cameras? The first week when I was teaching at that university, nobody asked a single question. Nobody. It was like, looking at black Zoom screens, but in real life. Like with 200 students sitting here, nobody says a thing. So it was complete one-way communication. And so I had to understand the culture. It was very difficult for me because in an American classroom, it is all about critical thinking and critical inquiry. There's continuous back and forth. Students are, commenting. They're absolutely allowed to disagree and so on and so forth, or do a counterpoint, and that's how we build a rich dialogue within a classroom. So it's not a one-way conversation. So during my second week, I decided to change strategy. What I did, does anybody know here what's WeChat? Do you guys know what's WeChat? Yes. Yes. So it's a combination of like a WhatsApp and Facebook together, but for the most people in China use it. So I decided to actually take my WeChat QR code and put it on a PowerPoint slide and show it on board. And I say, I know, and I told the students, I know that I'm sure you have lots of questions. So here is my WeChat QR code. You are more than welcome to actually message me with the questions. And the moment I did that, the questions kept coming. So the students do not want to ask the question, on live camera, but they want to ask me the question on WeChat. So once again, if you are dealing with certain cultural context, you need to understand what ticks or works in that culture. And that's the point I'm trying to get to, and that's what Drucker is saying, that culture would eat strategy for breakfast. Since we are talking about eat and food, let's look at some examples. McDonald's. Here is a picture of a McDonald's in India. Who knows what is the primary religion of most people in India? Hindus. What is one animal that the Hindus don't eat? Or beef, correct? Yeah. And the other part, which Diana correctly said, are Muslims, 30%. And they do not eat pork. So when McDonald's came into India, what is McDonald's known for? Burgers, right? What are burgers made of? Beef, primarily in America, or Ukraine or wherever else. By the way, I love Ukrainian burgers, like, at my McDonald's. They're incredible. But when McDonald's came into India, they quickly figured out that in this country, the 2 majority populations either do not eat beef or do not eat pork. So they cannot have those things on their product. So what is McDonald's best-selling item in India? Their veggie burger. You see? This is the understanding the cultural context in hospitality. If McDonald's tried to bring American-style beef burgers in India, they would have been driven out of the market in no time, because not only there will be no takers, but there will have been religious and other backlash. So that's why you need to understand the cultural context in these kinds of stuff. This picture I took after hiking the Great Wall in China. You know, I hiked the Great Wall in China right outside of Beijing for 6 hours. If you have seen a picture of the Great Wall in China, trust me, walking or hiking that place is like doing 200 cardios. Like, it is tough. I don't know how the soldiers or whoever else did that, And so by the time I was done the 6 hours hike, I was so hungry. And next to the Great Wall of China, we have this Burger King, Of course, it is wonderful. But look at the wrapper. It is the same, Burger King sandwich, of course, the Chinese version of it, but everything is localized in Mandarin. You see that? That is the context, the localization of hospitality, that how the packaging in the Burger King next to the, next to the Great Wall in China in Beijing is actually localized to the Mandarin. This is not written in English. So these are the kinds of things that you need to always kind of pay attention to, that what we are doing. Let me stop here. What questions or what thoughts are bubbling in your mind? And I know we are on YouTube Live, but you can ask questions. You are not going to get into trouble. Let's have some audience thoughts and reactions. And trust me, this is not my teaching style. I would rather be walking up and down and going right up to you, but for the for the recording, we have to do that. So go ahead. Thoughts, questions, anything that comes to your mind so far?
Let me start.
Yes.
Good afternoon to everyone. Dear Professor, could you say us what source of information do you use before you are going to come to another country? What is the main source of information which you trust?
I actually read different reviews. Say, for example, TripAdvisor is one of the sites that I use. I use other kind of sources on the internet. I also look at country-specific information on the United States State Department website, and so I use multiple sources. And in many cases, for my cultural acclimatization, if I know somebody in that country, I would ask them for opinion. How should I dress? What are some of the do's and don'ts, and so on and so forth. Does that make sense? Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Sure. Other? Yes, Diana.
I would like to know what are the new trends in tourism now that will be soon, or maybe that are coming now, or that are already some new trends in tourism, like in whole sphere,
Sure. Tourism is becoming more and more experiential. Some of the new trends in tourism is, like, for example, I showed you the picture of Chernobyl. Those are the kinds of things a lot of people are getting interested in. That means they want to actually discover new experiences which are not the same old. We are seeing an explosion in what we call gastro-tourism or food tourism. And last night when I was having the dinner with your respected director and Professor Svetlana and Professor Tamara, I was talking about it, that I see Ukraine's tremendous opportunity in gastro-tourism, because Ukraine has such diverse and such unique foods. People pay big money to actually now travel the world. If you think of some of the most well-established food destinations, Peru, Machu Picchu, I showed, actually Lima, the capital of Peru, is consistently now ranked as a food attraction. People go to Peru not only for the culture, but for the food, because, potatoes actually came from that region of the world. There are hundreds of native varieties of potatoes. Like, you can eat 20 types of potato bread there. So I'm just saying, and people will travel. So to answer your question, these kinds of educational dark tourism, food tourism, we are also seeing much more what I would say engaged tourism, that I want to go to a destination and do something there. I just do not want to sit back and relax. I want to participate. So whether it is working for a coffee plantation in Costa Rica while I'm vacationing, you see what I'm saying? That new traveler is looking for much more active experiences than just passively sitting on a beach and just drinking margaritas. I mean, there's a lot of that there, but we are seeing those trends emerging. And in the post-pandemic world, we are seeing a renewed interest in exploring these offbeat destinations far away from big cities and so on and so forth. If you look at all of the hotel RevPARs and ADRs, resort areas, the Maldives and the Mauritius and stuff like that, and they're doing phenomenal. Hawaii and all of those kinds of places. Did that answer your question, Diana? Yeah, thank you. Other thoughts or questions? Anything else?
Localization, you said you just draw the attention to the rep, yeah? So it is given in another language, but what about the marketing? So do they market the product the same? If the product is standardized, do they adapt the product to the market?
Yeah, absolutely. The taste of the Burger King burger in China is very different from that in the US. If you even know, Coca-Cola tastes very different in different markets, you know? Because generally in some markets people drink like a more sweetened version and all of that kind of stuff. So yes, I mean, there's a lot of market research that these companies do to before launch their products. Sometimes some products work, some don't, and they really calibrate and launch those products. So localization is huge. And that's the reason these big brands have figured out that, once again, going back to Drucker's culture eats strategy for breakfast, they need to understand what products work culturally, contextually, and what products don't. So fantastic. Okay, let's move on. Let's talk about the low context and high context cultures. What are these? So for example, it's very important to understand what is a low context culture versus high context culture. So let me start with country examples. A good example of a low context culture would be the United States, and high context culture is Ukraine. What is a low context culture? Low context cultures are highly individualistic. I, my food, my space, you know, it is about I. And high context cultures like Ukraine, it is a collectivist culture. It is we, society. So that is the reason in America, when you arrive at a hotel, even in a luxury hotel, the porter or the doorman outside the hotel would always ask you that, sir, do you need help with your luggage? Because in America, it's an individual society. You are expected to carry your own luggage, you know? So automatically, and I am completely capable of carrying my own luggage. If I need assistance, I am going to ask for you. Compared to in many high context cultures in hotel service, Thailand, India, all of these places, as soon as you get off the car, if you have suitcases, automatically the porter will take your bags. There's a presumption because, you know, it's a much more collectivist culture. Because these cultures are also much more, the high context cultures are much more relationship orientated compared to low context cultures, which are task orientated. So in the United States, I always tell people that, you know, it's a highly task-oriented culture, that the tasks are individualized, you are expected to perform, and once you do that, you move on from there. Another very important aspect where this low context, high context works is what we call direct communication versus nuanced communication. Let me give you a kind of a little extreme example. So an example of a low context culture will be, say, the Netherlands or Germany. They are also very ultra low context culture. Communication is very direct. If you actually have a Dutch or a German friend, if they do not like something, they will say to your face that, I don't like it, you know. Normally, a person in Ukraine is not going to talk like that. They are actually going to communicate in a much more nuanced way. So, like if you have a Dutch friend and you went to the salon and got a haircut and you ask them, how do I look after my haircut? If they think that you look ugly, they will say, you look ugly, you know? Because in a low context culture, if somebody, because it is highly individualized, if I am asking you for some opinion, I really value your opinion, you know? And so I am expecting you to be absolutely honest and upfront and direct about it. You know, compared to in relationship-oriented culture, you will never say that. You will say that, oh, I think you are looking okay, or, you know, and that kinds of stuff. you see how the communication is nuanced, and that is exactly the way things operate. One of the biggest examples where low context and high context cultures, there are some clashes, is in the concept of time. In high context cultures, time is much more, what I would say, open and flexible. In high context cultures like Latin America, many of the Asian countries and so on and so forth, if you invite somebody for dinner, your friend would say, what time should I come? What people usually say, maybe 7-ish. 7-ish can mean anything between 6:45 to 7:30. In a low context culture, in North America, if somebody invites you for dinner, you ask what time, they will say 6 o'clock, it actually means 5:55 p.m. So like in North America, we have a saying, 5 minutes early is on time is late. So lot of students who come from outside to study in America gets a rude awakening from high context cultures in our classroom cultures or classroom etiquettes, because when I start my 9 o'clock class, my doors close at 8:59. After that, if you open the door and walk into the class, there'll be 200 pairs of eyes looking at you. And you do that walk of shame once or twice, then you fit in. You will never be late, because all the back seats are taken, so you have to walk the entire lecture hall, whereas everybody is looking and the professor is standing quietly, because I start my lecture at 9 o'clock. 5 minutes early is on time is late. So like I always tell people, if you want to insult somebody in the United States, you show up 5 minutes late. That is the worst form of insult or rudeness considered in a low context culture, because time is highly valued, and because it is also an individualistic culture. That means if you show up late, you are disrespecting me. There is no societal understanding of that, okay, 7-ish means anything from 6:45 to 7:30. So these kinds of things are very important to understand when you are working directly with guests from different kinds of cultures. That's the reason many times when I will do training programs in places like India or Thailand and so on and so forth, people would ask me, why do sometimes, say, guests from North America get mad when they are, when they arrive at the hotel and they are just trying to take their suitcase or briefcase. They're just trying to be nice, but the guest doesn't want that, because it's a much, much more individualistic kind of culture. So like in US, we consider lateness is called tardiness, and tardiness is not viewed very kindly at all. There are real-time professional consequences of tardiness. People think that you are not professional, you are sloppy, and so on and so forth. Any thoughts or questions about low context and high context? So just remember, as you are dealing with customers, guests, whoever whatever you want to call them, depending on where they are come from, they may be used to certain kinds of things. That's the reason in certain cultures, I continuously hear that guests, though the checkout time is 12 p.m., guests are not checking out. Like they're still in the room till 1 p.m. because there's a sense of flexibility. Because 12 p.m. can mean anything between 11:30 and 2 p.m. But that is not the context, especially in kind of low context cultures. Communication styles, very important to understand. In low context cultures, communication is overt and explicit. It's simple and clear. You tell people directly what you have to say. Don't beat around the bush. Do not waste, anybody's time. Focus is on verbal communication. That means you mean what you say. So if you say you are going to do something, people expect you are going to do that. And small talk is always brief and does not involve personal information. Like in the North American context, you do not ask people about their family, whether they're married, all of that kinds of, that's none of your business, because it's a highly individualistic society. You start a meeting, first 2 minutes is, how is everybody doing today? Oh, it is sunny or snowy or rainy or something like that, small talk about the weather. Then you get on to the task, because time is super important. In high context cultures, covert and implicit use of metaphors and reading between the lines. Body language is extremely important, so is non-verbal communication. eye contact is avoided based on rank and hierarchy. In North American context, when you are talking to a person, you would like to make eye contact. It is considered very rude if you do not make eye contact while talking to a person in the United States, because that actually indicates you are really not interested in what they have to say. Compared to many other cultures, especially in Asian cultures, you do not make eye contact with persons of authority, people of higher power. And small talk is, in high context cultures, are extended and may involve personal information. When I first started traveling to the Middle East for work, I quickly understood that small talk is an essential part of doing business. First 30 minutes is spent drinking Arabic coffee and doing chit-chat, It is considered very rude if, as the guest, that if within 5 minutes I can say, okay, let's get down to business. That is not how things happen there. And the first couple of times, Arabic coffee is delicious, but it's very strong. And so I had already 3 cups of coffee, and I'm like, oh my God, and they're pouring, and I'm like, I don't know, I don't want to be rude and offend these people and all of that. And then my host asked, are you sure you want more coffee? I said, no, I do not want more coffee. I already had 3 cups. And he said, all you need to do is just shake your cup like this, which means end class, please do not give me any more. Those are the cultural contexts. You actually do that. You spend time building up that relationship, because the cultures are relationship oriented. Who are you? Who is in your family? How was your travel and all of that kinds of stuff. You discuss, you create a framework, then you get into business, compared to Germany, Holland, United States and all, where 2 minutes of small talk, then we need to accomplish this in a 1 hour meeting. And at the end of 1 hour, it doesn't matter, what happens and stuff like that. People will walk out of that meeting because, time is of essential essence. Any thoughts about communication styles? Have any of you encountered these type of communication styles while talking to people from other countries, or got into these kind of things? Diana? Yeah, that's a great question, and the short answer to that is experience. The more you work with people, the more you will get the hang of it. Later on I have a slide what we call the kind of culture agnostic, because for example in Kyiv, I was staying at the Intercontinental Hotel, which is Intercontinental is a North American brand, very good, 5-star luxury. It's the best of both worlds. Very professional, but at the same time, very hospitable, and so on and so forth. So if you actually work for a really good organization like that, you will undergo cultural sensitivity training and all of that kind of stuff, where you perform at a level of professionalism where it really doesn't matter. And then as you gain more experience, you calibrate, that, this guest is taking more time to order, or you also pick up that, in many countries, the guests are much more stoic. They are not looking to conversation, and so on and so forth. In some other countries, mostly relationship-oriented cultures, people are more chatty, They just want to talk to the server, to the bartender, to the, the hotel employee. They just take more time and all of that kind of stuff. And if it is someone like me who continuously travels, I do not want to talk to anybody. Give me my room key, take my credit card, take my passport. I want to go to my room and sleep, because, So I'm just saying, understanding that where that guest is kind of coming from comes through more and more experience. Also formal training, which most organizations these days provide. But that's actually a very, very good question. I'm glad you asked that. Here is a slide, what we call the culture as an iceberg. What is culture as an iceberg? You have to remember there are 3 types of culture that we are dealing with here at any given point in time. So one is called what is called the high culture, on the top of the iceberg that we can see. What is high culture? Things like fine arts, drama, literature, classical music. So, when I arrive in Kyiv, I know, what are some of the hallmarks of Ukrainian culture. I can go there and I can experience it. Then we have what we call the folk culture that we are aware of. What are some of the things that you can be aware of, which are floating around the surfaces? So why is these things important? Because high culture and folk culture, you can actually practice or read about them on the internet and so on and so forth, and have some kind of a cultural understanding where you are going from. But then you have what we call deep culture that we are unaware of. And that's where you really understand. For example, there are many societies in the world where the genders, males and females, are segregated. Like in the Middle East, when I'm traveling, I will never shake hands with a woman, unless that person puts out their hand first, like many of the female executives there or somebody like that, they're comfortable. So you have to understand in certain cultures that, that is not done. Also, in North American culture, especially in individualistic culture, there is a concept called bubble. Who knows what's bubble? Yes, like what we call the personal space. So you do not violate people's personal space. If you live in very crowded countries, people do not have the concept of personal space. I experienced that firsthand, when I took a group of students for a study tour to India. India is very busy and crowded. There is no concept of personal space. We went to the McDonald's, where in North America, everybody will stand at least 5 feet apart, in line respectfully. And if you do that in India, the local people will think you are still reading the menu. So the local people were cutting in front of my students, and my students were getting mad that, why these people are disrespecting their line. They were not disrespecting the line. They were thinking you are still, taking time to read the menu so that you are not in the line. Whereas in North America, nobody will stand shoulder to shoulder. That will be considered very offensive, and people will think, oh my God, how creepy. Like, why is this person? And that creepiness extends to when you are driving on the interstate, even in America. Like, if a car comes more than 100 feet when you're driving on the interstate, we always say, why is this person on my tail? Like, you maintain personal space even while driving on the interstate. There is that unaware, unwritten code certain cultures have in certain kinds of things, whether it is shaking hands with people of opposite gender, or whether it is it's talk about personal bubbles and so on and so forth. Any questions about deep culture, folk culture, and high culture?
I have a question.
Sure. Okay.
You are traveling all over the world, and how is going your adaptation in different countries?
Yeah, that's a great question. The more you travel, going back to the experience I just responded to Diana. Adaptation is something that you just learn as you do more and more. For example, one of the things I do is, if I know somebody in that culture or country, I will always ask them that what is appropriate, what is not appropriate. There are some, now of course, you can find a lot of things on the internet, but also at the same time, I can also tell you that I have made mistakes, cultural mistakes, while traveling. But in my estimate, or in my experience, I would say most people are extremely forgiving. They know you are not from that culture, right? So for example, it happens like, forgetting to remove my shoes before entering a temple in Thailand and something like that, and they're very kind. They will say, could you please remove your shoes, rather than take. Who was that? That's actually a great question. And like, the more you do this stuff, and I'm so glad that Diana asked this question, because other things that happens is the more you travel or more you engage with cultures, your personal biases start to actually diminish. Because like I talked about, the eating the fried scorpions, I probably would have not done that 10 years ago, because I'm like, no, I don't know what is going to happen, because this is so alien, this is so out of my comfort zone. But with experience, comes with that okay, I am a much more culturally nuanced person, and I can kind of pick up what is on and what is not on, and that kind of stuff. So yes, and that's the reason, the more you travel, and if you are kind of a I would say more a kind of a sensitive, intelligent person, you can pick up a lot of these cues. Like you don't want to enter a temple wearing your shoes where everybody else has their shoes off, right? I mean, you should be able to figure that one out. Like I should not be doing that. So exactly, like I see that all the time when I take students to the Middle East, like in Muscat, Oman, Sultan Qaboos Mosque. I mean, you are going to a mosque, you are expected to dress very modestly. Yes, if you are a female and you show up in a shorts, that is not going to let you enter. As simple as that. So the cultural sensitivity, like can I go to a house of worship, like that, and so on and so forth. So that's the nuance that actually happens. Great questions. Now, cultural dimensions in hospitality. Let us look at some of the examples. Are we still hanging in here? Are we having fun with all of these examples and pictures and all of that kind of stuff? So, very good. So when we talk about hospitality and business etiquette, there are three things, and this ties right back into what we are discussing, is what we call the emotional intelligence, situational intelligence, and cultural awareness. And what is emotional intelligence? Emotional intelligence is the ability to put yourself in another person's shoes, and say that, why is this person, what would this person need, what would this person want, and so on and so forth. So it is not only about me, I am actually being aware of what the needs are of the other people. Situational intelligence, going back to the other Diana's question, how do I know that, that when I'm serving in a restaurant and all of that kind of stuff, you pick up the situational intelligence, looking at how this particular guest is behaving or interacting, and then calibrating your response to that. And then of course, cultural awareness. So I'm going to show you examples of all of that kind of stuff. Like in Japan, even for business meetings, many times you will see high-powered Japanese executives. They are all dressed in custom-made suits, but then they will remove their shoes, put on their indoor shoes, and they will sit on the floor. And that's how you do business, So you have to remove your shoes, put on your indoor shoes, and be ready to sit on the floor. That's how negotiations happen. So it doesn't matter who you are. So once again, training yourself to actually do that. I actually teach a class called International Business Management for our Executive MBA program. And we have these incredible discussions because all the students are, 10, 20, 30 years experience in the industry. Very rich discussions on how these things are nuanced and changing the culture of all of that kinds of stuff. Like how many times you have to do toasts, with drinks in certain cultures and so on and so forth. Body language and posturing, extremely important. So this goes back with experience. If you look at, I'm at a very high level meeting in Thailand. As you can see, this is a very formal environment. If you look at my host, how she is sitting with 45 degrees, her knees turned towards me with her hands like this. And what am I doing? I am mirroring my host's response. This is the cultural appropriateness. I am not sitting with my legs open or, my legs crossed. So I am mirroring. If you see our hands, there is a coordination in that. So I am picking up from the situational intelligence that, how is this person, what is her body language? I am mimicking her body language. Why? Because we are having a conversation. When we are both in same sync in our body language, then the conversation flows better. Right? I mean, this is not rocket science, So these are the kinds of things. That's the reason if you ever work for brands like Four Seasons, Ritz-Carlton, all of these very high-end luxury brands, they will actually do body language training for you. Posture is extremely important. Not only, how you stand, how you sit, how you say something is extremely important. I'm going to show you pictures of my students. When I take students on study tours all over the world, every day for the itinerary, I tell them not only what we will do, but what they're going to wear. Because it is extremely important. This is the Middle East. We are meeting with a federal minister in the country of Oman. And I want all of my students look like young professionals, not students. It is very important. We are visiting a federal ministry. So the lady in the middle, she's Her Excellency Michael Maruki, the Undersecretary for the Ministry of Tourism. They did a 2-hour presentation for our group. So I'm just saying that I always tell people, dress for the job that you'd like to have. How do you see yourself? So if you see yourself like someone of our position and power and authority, dressed like that. Here we are doing a tea tasting in India with one of the top tea sommeliers in the world. I mean, it was a fascinating experience. Look how the students are dressed. You know, it's a conservative, traditional culture. They are not dressed in shorts and t-shirts. You know, they are still dressed very elegantly. Different picture. Burj Al Arab, inside the royal suite of the Burj Al Arab. This royal suite is $45,000 a night. $45,000 a night. Everything is real gold. The ceilings are real gold. And so when we are taking students there inside, it's a whole different level of professionalism. And a lot of times people will ask me, what do you get, you know, for $45,000 a night? Well, of course, this is the hotel. You know, they built an island 1 mile inside the ocean to actually build this hotel. And I'm getting ready to take another 25 students in March to actually, you know, spend some time there. We always spend 4 or 5 hours looking at how the hotel is run and operated and all of that kind of stuff. So you get bedrooms like this, you know, everything is absolute gold. And last time when we were doing this tour, apparently Kim Kardashian stayed here right before the week went, so all of my students were jumping on this bed and doing Instagram stories. I'm like, they're going to cut my head off, like, you know, here. You get bathrooms with faucets of gold, that water comes out of that. And my favorite are, of course, the gold-plated TVs. Why not? You know? So I always tell students, please do not touch anything here, because if you break anything, we probably have to be slaves here for the next 300 years, you know, because to pay it up. But cultural context in hospitality, if you are going to be actually working in these kinds of environments, the Burj Al Arab, I have a lot of friends who work there. Even the jewelry is actually issued by the hotel. Everything is actually controlled by the brand. If people are paying incredible amount of money to stay in this hotel, who knows what's that thing on the top? What's that thing, that spaceship looking thing? What's that? No, that's the helipad. If you pay $45,000 a night, you don't take an Uber from the airport. You arrive by helicopter. So the check-in happens over there. So if you want to work at the Burj Al Arab, you can't be afraid of heights, my friend. And then I don't know how the girls keep their hair intact, because the wind there is, you know. So you go up there, the helicopters are arriving, the guests are arriving, do the check-in there, walk them to their suite, and then the butler, private butler, takes over from there. You know, it's a whole different level of experience and expertise. So if you are, and we are talking about, you know, billionaires, royalty, rock stars, you know, all of that kind of stuff, very different. The way you deliver the guest experience will be very, very different. And so your situational intelligence, your cultural intelligence, all of things, you have to be on A game all the time, 24/7, absolutely. It is not possible to kind of slip up. I always take the cultural awareness. How do I make American students understand that how to be culturally aware? Here we are at the Sheikh Mohammed Center of Cultural Understanding in Dubai. In North American context, like here in Ukraine, food is always communal, you know? You eat food with friends, you share food with family. In North American individualistic culture, food is my lunch, you know? Do not touch my food, absolutely. So how do other people eat? This is how people eat in the Middle East. Food is communal. So, you know, we are getting a briefing in the Sheikh Mohammed Center in Dubai where our students are understanding and we are served this lunch. And then, of course, cultural awareness. What it feels like to wear an abaya, you know, is a very different experience. They have only seen that on TV or movies or pictures and something like that. So they will bring out the abayas and ask our students, do you want to try? And this is how kind of build cultural empathy and emotional intelligence in understanding what is the otherness. What does the otherness kind of feel like? And this is one of my students getting a henna painting in the fort in India. So cultural context in hospitality, you know, research the culture you'll be interacting with, listen, observe, learn. This is very crucial. Listen, you know, listen first. And I always tell people, do not listen to respond, listen to understand. Let me repeat. Do not listen to respond, listen to understand. We are almost trained to listen to respond. If I'm asking a question, you know, the need is to respond. But if you actually listen to understand, then the situation becomes much more better. Observation. If every other person is taking off their shoes before entering the temple, I should do that as well. And then with the listening and observing, you learn. Ask and clarify what is appropriate. If you have a local host, ask, is it okay if I do this? And they might say, yeah, it is okay, or they might say, no, it is not okay. Err on the side of formality. Like with my students, I always tell people that if you do not know how to dress, dress formally, dress traditionally, dress conservatively. And then emotional intelligence is key. So are there culture agnostic attributes in hospitality? That means, are there things that it doesn't matter what culture you are in, which are universally true? Absolutely. Empathy is universally true. Respect. Everybody likes to be respected, irrespective of low context or high context culture. Grace. Have a sense of grace. For a lot of students like yourself, like they will ask me that how do we practice grace and gratitude? I always tell them, start practicing holding the door open for other people. Simply, it doesn't matter who it is. It could be young, old, whatever, and stuff like that. It doesn't matter whether you are a male or a female. Once you are doing that, hold the door open. Say, after you. Hold the elevator door open and say after. And once you do that, practice, is going to become a part of your DNA. And then you will actually start practicing both grace and gratitude. Say thank you profoundly, say at every opportunity, say thank you to people for the smallest of things. You will see, because people inherently like to be acknowledged and recognized. And when you are saying thank you to people, look them in their eye. Doesn't matter whether they're a server at a coffee shop or whoever it is. Say thank you for the little service thing, because it doesn't cost anything, right? And what I'm saying is, for your future success and future careers, these things will set you apart. These things will make you a much better professional, because you will come across not only as solid, but also somebody who comes with humility, who comes with grace, and a sense of gratitude. So these things are culture agnostic. It doesn't matter whether you're in Japan or USA or Peru or China or whatever. Practicing these things takes some time, and then you do that over and over again. How does it translate into the real world? Look at the Ritz-Carlton credos, the 3 steps of service. Now we are getting into the real case of hospitality business, one of the best brands in hospitality in the world. A warm and sincere greeting using the guest's name. That's the first thing, if you work for Ritz-Carlton, that you have to understand doing. You need to remember names. Once the guest comes into the hotel, it is no more sir or madam. You have to say, welcome back, Mr. Jha. That's the training you have. Then anticipation and fulfillment of each guest's needs, in a sense that that you have to remember. Like in the Ritz-Carlton organization, they always say, if you see a problem, you own a problem. That means you may be a maintenance person, but if the guest says, my coffee wasn't warm enough, then you report to food and beverage and say that guest's coffee was not warm enough. You can't say, oh, I work for maintenance, that's food and beverage. You see a problem, you own the problem. And there's a 360-degree feedback loop that then doesn't matter, even if you're the maintenance person, you go back and check with the guest, was your coffee okay this morning? You see, that's you close the loop, and that's how you deliver a world-class service. And fond farewell, give a warm goodbye and use the guest's name when they're leaving. How was your stay? Is there something that I can do for you? Do you need a taxi? Or where are you flying to? Make that simple chit-chat. And look at their motto. We are ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. Ritz-Carlton does not call their employees as employees, staff, team members. They are ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. That means you have to actually exemplify behaviors of ladies and gentlemen. Grace, gratitude, empathy. You see how now these things are connected? These are just not fancy words or philosophical stuff. These are business brands. Brands are built upon these kinds of stuff. And I will show you how these things actually play out in real life. So the 3 steps of service: a warm and sincere greeting using the guest's name, I will show you an extreme example of that, and then probably I'll ask our friend to play the video. Can you please play the video? Can you just play this video on the? So this is me arriving at one of the new Ritz-Carltons in India. Look at. Yeah, it should be. If he moves the cursor over here, there should be a player. Just go over there. No, the video should be played. Okay. Let's play it that way. Can you play it one more time? Just what is it? Okay. Yes, I'm very spoiled, you know. So what did you see in this example? Did you see that how the hotel actually created a magical experience using the guest name? You know, the arrival experience was absolutely magical. And so I work with some of these brands, so you know, I get to see or experience some of these very, very incredible kinds of stuff. But look at, you know, how warm and professional. These are all ladies and gentlemen, serving ladies and gentlemen. And this is how it actually happens. Can we go back to the last slide? Okay. Oh, wait, now it plays. I just don't know. I mean, now it lost that. Okay. Let's go to the last slide, final slide. Okay. No, we had enough of me, you know, be the movie star moment. So okay. But that's okay. We have one more slide. I just wanted to kind of show you that. Yeah. Yes. So I would like to end with where we started from, with Drucker saying that culture is strategy for breakfast. You know, as you see that, you know, throughout this presentation or this lecture, I took you through a journey of cultural context, and I explained to you how low context and high context cultures are different, and how these things like grace and gratitude and empathy and cultural awareness and emotional intelligence actually are built into brand standards by many, many, many top brands in the world. So these are just not big words. These are a part of a business strategy. So if you aspire to actually play the game at this level, then you have to actually be mindful and practice yourself, you know, to be professionals like this. So with that, I'd like to open it up for questions, comments, thoughts. I know we are just out of time for the lecture, but we have time to, you know, continue with the conversation. Here is all of my social media details. I know most of you are actually connected with me on many of the social media, but if you are not, please feel free to connect, and so that you can continue with the conversation. So I hope this was helpful, folks. This was interesting, and you learned something new, and all of that. Fantastic. So, what questions or what thoughts and comments we have, and is it okay if I now, or can we stop recording and then we can?